The yellow backpack was almost as big as he was. It was pristine, bright, and practically swallowed little Henry whole. But the cheerful color couldn't hide the tears streaming down his face as his tiny hands locked into the fabric of Tu Na's trousers. It was his first day of preschool at the village gate, and he was wailing. Just a few feet away, Alex wasn't looking at his son. His face was entirely pale. He stood by the rusted iron fence, pressing his phone hard against his ear, his eyes locked on a flashing red error screen. A domestic shipment worth thousands of dollars, the financial lifeline of their farm, had just vanished off the grid. Welcome back to Alex, Tu Na, and Henry's world. If you've ever tried to build a life from the ground up while raising a family, you know the delicate tightrope walk it requires. Today, that rope snapped. Before the chaos at the school gate, the morning had started like any other in their wooden house. The soft clinking of spoons against porcelain bowls. A small dish of warm rice porridge sitting untouched on the kitchen table while Tu Na gently coaxed Henry's feet into his tiny blue sandals. The rural air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. It was supposed to be a milestone day, a quiet, proud transition for their little boy. But in a family business, peace is fragile. The moment Alex had locked the bamboo gate behind them, his phone had started vibrating. Not a text, a persistent, frantic ringing from the logistics company. Now, standing in the dusty schoolyard, the innocent, brightly painted murals of the preschool clashed violently with the harsh reality of their adult world. Henry sobbed, burying his face in Tu Na's leg, terrified of the loud children and the unfamiliar teachers. Tu Na reached down, her rough hands, calloused from hours in the garden, stroking his hair. She wanted nothing more than to scoop him up, abandon this plan, and carry him back to the quiet safety of their porch. But out of the corner of her eye, she saw Alex pacing frantically, his knuckles white around his phone. The factory needed him immediately, and they needed her too. The pressure of a family farm doesn't arrive as a single manageable wave. It comes from all directions at once, demanding 100% of your attention for completely different emergencies. Trying to shield his panic from the other parents dropping off their children, Alex retreated to a quiet corner near the school's concrete boundary wall. He stared down at the GPS tracking application on his phone. The screen was completely dark. The blue dot representing their cargo truck had simply ceased to exist. "What do you mean you can't reach the driver?" Alex hissed into the receiver, his voice hushed but raw with aggression. The dispatcher on the other end mumbled excuses over the static of a bad connection. Sweat beaded on Alex's forehead, tracing the deep lines of exhaustion around his eyes. Every minute that truck sat unaccounted for under the hot Vietnamese sun. Their carefully crafted product degraded, and their savings bled out. Meanwhile, Tu Na was physically trapped. She had managed to guide Henry into the courtyard, but the final separation was impossible. Defeated, she lowered herself onto a tiny, brightly colored plastic preschool chair just outside the classroom door. Her knees were pushed up awkwardly toward her chest. She sat there, paralyzed, listening to Henry's non-stop, terrified cries echoing from inside the room. Every sob tore directly at her chest. This is the painful illusion of work-life balance. When your livelihood is tied to your home, there is no neat division. Tu Na sat on that comically small chair, feeling entirely powerless. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Another alert from the farm. The factory workers were waiting for her instructions to manage the stalled production line. Her mind was being pulled forcefully toward the dark warehouse, the missing truck, the financial ruin threatening their hard work. Yet her heart was anchored right there on that plastic chair, bleeding for her son who thought he was being abandoned in a strange place. She and Alex had tried to divide and conquer, but sitting in the heavy, humid morning air, listening to her husband arguing with a dispatcher while her son sobbed for her, Tu Na realized the terrifying truth. Neither of them was winning. They were simply failing at two things at once. The minutes stretched on, thick and heavy. Every time Tu Na tried to stand, Henry's small hands tightened their desperate grip on her shirt, his knuckles turning white. She felt the eyes of the other village mothers on her, not in judgment, but in a silent, shared understanding. This is the breaking point most families try to hide. You want to be everything, the perfect, comforting mother and the sharp, capable business owner. But in moments like this, you are just a fractured person, sitting awkwardly on a plastic chair, failing entirely at both. Then a familiar shadow fell across the sunlit courtyard. It was Ba Phuong. The older woman walked with the slow, deliberate pace of someone who had weathered decades of unpredictable village life. She didn't carry a phone. She didn't look rushed or panicked. Ba Phuong stopped directly in front of Tu Na, her weathered sun-spotted hands reaching down without a single word. Gently, but with an immovable firmness, she uncurled Henry's fingers from the fabric of Tu Na's shirt. "Go," Ba Phuong said, her voice low and raspy, carrying the absolute authority of an elder. "The boy will cry, then he will play. If that truck is lost, what will you feed him tomorrow? Go do your work." It was a harsh, practical truth that cut straight through the thick emotional fog. Here is the quiet realization that every family business owner eventually faces. The illusion of the self-made, independent household is a complete lie. You cannot survive without your village. When the overlapping emergencies of life strike, you must have a community to catch what you are forced to drop. Tu Na's breath hitched. She looked at her son, his face red and streaked with tears, now pressed tightly against Ba Phuong's faded floral shirt. Tu Na leaned in, her lips trembling as she pressed a long, desperate kiss to Henry's damp forehead. The physical effort it took to stand up and turn her back on him felt like moving through deep, heavy water. She walked toward the bamboo gate. With every step, the sound of his wailing pulled at her spine, but she didn't look back. The heavy gate clicked shut behind her, a sharp, defining sound in the morning air. She had made the agonizing choice. Now she had to make it matter. Alex was already straddling the motorbike, the engine idling with a low, nervous rumble. Tu Na climbed onto the back, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist. There were no words exchanged between them. None were needed. The shift had happened. The paralyzing maternal guilt was violently shoved down, instantly replaced by a fierce practical need to protect what they had built. They tore down the narrow, bumpy dirt roads, leaving a thick cloud of red dust in their wake. The relentless mid-morning sun beat down heavily on their shoulders. The wind whipped past them, hot and dry, carrying the scent of diesel and burning rice fields. Alex navigated the dangerous, jagged potholes purely on muscle memory, his jaw set like stone. For a parent, aggressive action is a profound form of love. They weren't just chasing a piece of lost machinery. They were chasing Henry's future, his food, the roof over his head. The deep sacrifice of leaving him crying at that school gate had to be justified by saving this shipment. 10 miles outside the village, the logistics app had pinged a final weak signal near an abandoned industrial zone. They rounded a sharp bend, the tires skidding slightly in the loose white gravel. There it was. The massive cargo truck sat silently under the oppressive heat, parked awkwardly next to a broken-down, rusted metal way station. The driver was sitting on the dusty bumper, his head buried in his hands, staring blankly at a shattered smartphone on the ground. Alex killed the motorbike engine and hit the dirt running. Tu Na was right behind him. The silence of the abandoned way station was eerie, broken only by the ticking of the truck's cooling exhaust pipe. This is where the real work of a family business happens. Not in the glamorous, polished moments of success, but in the dirt, the heat, and the quiet panic of a mechanical breakdown. Tu Na didn't wait for Alex to interrogate the driver. She immediately moved to the back of the truck, her hands gripping the heavy iron latch of the cargo door. The metal burned her palms, but she forced it open. She climbed inside the stifling oven-like container, methodically counting the wooden pallets, checking the delicate temperature seals on their agricultural goods. Every single box represented hours of backbreaking labor in their fields. Every seal represented their family's reputation. She moved quietly in the stifling heat, doing the gritty, unglamorous math of survival. They had found it in time. The load was safe. But as the adrenaline finally began to drain from her shaking hands, the heavy, suffocating weight of the morning rushed rapidly back in. The ride back to the village felt twice as long as the journey out. The fierce, protective adrenaline that had fueled them just an hour ago was completely gone, rapidly replaced by a cold, hollow silence. The cargo was secure, the dispatcher had been updated, and the financial disaster was safely averted. But the hidden cost of their victory sat like a stone in Tu Na's chest. The closer the motorbike got to the village, the longer the afternoon shadows stretched across the familiar dirt roads. Parents building a family business live with a constant, quiet anxiety that outsiders rarely see. It is the terrifying, paralyzing fear that the very sacrifices you make to ensure your family's survival are actively breaking your family's heart in the process. Alex's shoulders were visibly tight as he carefully navigated the final turn. He squeezed Tu Na's hand as he parked the motorbike outside the preschool's bamboo gate. They were fully bracing themselves for the worst. They expected to find a completely traumatized child, red-faced, emotionally exhausted from hours of crying, forever viewing his first day of school as a cruel abandonment. They walked through the gate, their posture heavy, their breathing shallow. The schoolyard was quiet now, mostly emptied of the morning chaos. The brightly painted murals seemed to mock their parental failure. And then, near the back of the courtyard, they saw him. Henry wasn't crying. He was sitting comfortably cross-legged on a woven bamboo mat in the cool shade of a large mango tree, happily chewing on sliced dragon fruit. His tiny hands and cheeks were covered in brightly colored, chaotic finger paint. Beside him, peeling another piece of fruit and radiating a warm, unbothered calm, sat Ba Fuong. Henry looked up, his eyes widening with pure joy at the sight of his parents. He scrambled to his feet and proudly held up a very messy, entirely abstract piece of paper. It was a finger painting of a tractor. Alex let out a long, trembling breath, a heavy breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding since the morning. He walked over and gently lifted Henry high onto his shoulders, the sweet, sticky juice from the fruit dripping down his son's chin, mixing with the harsh dust of the day. Tu Na stepped forward and took Ba Puong's weathered, calloused hand in hers. No apologies or grand speeches were spoken. The absolute silence between them carried a profound, permanent gratitude. Alex and Tu Na had spent so much time trying to perfectly balance the impossible weight of their farm and their family on just two sets of shoulders. But the deepest truth of building a life is that independence is an illusion. The community is the invisible safety net that makes a family's survival possible. Tomorrow will undoubtedly bring a new crisis to the farm, and the tightrope will always be there to walk. But as they slowly headed back toward the warmth of their simple wooden house, Tu Na picked up the bright yellow backpack from the dirt and finally smiled. They didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. Have you ever had to choose between a family milestone and a work emergency? Share your experience with us in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment. It truly helps our small channel grow.